So we're going to be talking about how to create a sustainable talent ecosystem. On to the next slide. My name's Katrina and I'm your host today. I am a community engagement manager and I work with DASA, and I'm an interviewer and podcast host. On to the next slide, please. So just a little bit of information about the Enterprise Leadership Forum that DASA organises on a monthly basis. It's designed for knowledge sharing for and by our global community of DevOps practitioners, thought leaders, and industry experts that share how they solve specific problems in their organizations and stimulate ideas for the future. On to the next. So obviously we're going to talk a little bit about DASA and why DASA, and explain our membership community and the Talent Academy that we're going to be launching in May. And then I will introduce the speakers today and hand over to Sebastian Lorisset, who will facilitate the conversation and interactive discussion. And then we will wrap up and there will be a poll at the end to have your feedback. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. Please keep your microphone on mute during the conversation. But if you have a question, there is an option to raise your hand, and we will keep an eye out. If you would like to speak during the conversation, we want to make this as interactive as possible. So it's not just the speakers today who are talking, but we're going to be listening from the audience. Raise your hand, announce your name and company as you speak, or if you prefer to write the question in the chat, we will read it out and we'll do it that way, basically. So the idea is to make it as interactive as possible, and your opinions matter. And as I mentioned earlier, there will be a poll at the end where when we close the discussion. It's very important, to have your feedback for future conversations and topics, because we want, to hear from you what you would like to be discussed in this forum, and also perhaps have you as a speaker. So please, also join us in this forum. We want to grow it and have as many practitioners and leaders in this forum to share their, challenges and successes and, practices. This webinar will be recorded and it will be shared with a wider audience online. On to the next, please. So I'm going to hand over to Helen now, who's going to give a brief about DASA, and Helen Parker is our membership director. So Helen, over to you to talk about DASA.
Yep, just sight unseen at the moment, camera issue, but the voice says it all really. So welcome everyone. For those who don't know about DASA, we've been around since around 2016, and we've got a strong network of about 300 plus partner organisations. Our goal is to define, inform and advance DevOps, and we do this through the networking, information sharing like now, through awards, continuous learning, certification, all kinds of elements. We pride ourselves in facilitating discussion, sharing ideas and best practices. Just yesterday, we had a chat with Leah Esterage, who's the Global Talent Director for Reckitt, on how to brand your organisation as an attractive employer. Of course, when discussing employer branding, the discussion naturally leads to other topics like organisational culture, the challenge in finding talent, how to maintain and invest in talent. And as Reckitt has 43,000 staff, I'm going to say it would be a challenging task. But there are thousands of organisations that are similar size to Reckitt where strategic goals rely on a workforce with a blend of skills and capabilities covering technical, business and digital domains. But there's a technical talent shortage, and it's only going to get worse. You know, we reflected on this last night, where Korn Ferry forecasted that by 2030, financial and business services will have a skilled worker deficit of more than 10 million people. The technology and media telecom sector, meanwhile, could be short of more than 4 million workers worldwide. And this deficit has the potential to stall the latest stage of digital revolution. So talent management practices like talent acquisition and nurturing, mobility, career development, and employee engagement to keep retention all become such an integral part of the strategic discussion. So it's a part of your sustainable talent ecosystem. And the wonderful part about community platforms like this is that they offer guidance and advice based on co-creation and shared experience. So we want to invite you to join the ELF community each month to discuss these complex but relevant topics. And besides the events like this, we also tap into the collective intelligence and experience of other leaders around the globe and exchange ideas and practical guidance. So please utilize the resources online, such as recordings and white papers on our website. And if you have any questions on how to be involved in any of these communities, do not hesitate to ask. So I will now stop talking, Katrina, and I'm going to hand it back over to you.
Wonderful, Helen. Thank you very much. And yeah, so let's start by introducing today's speakers. And as I mentioned before, we really want to hear from the audience. So please, do chip in. We will be keeping an eye on your questions during the discussion, and we want you to participate as much as our panelists today. So first off, I'm going to introduce Cici Jia, who is Head of Projects and Initiatives for Siemens Global Talent and Leadership at, so very much, has a lot of experience focused around talent, upskilling and reskilling. Previously was Vice President at RELX for Learning and Development, and has a lot to say on how to create a sustainable talent ecosystem from an enterprise place. And we also have today joining, who is very much from a service provider, which is what we want to connect today. Also, hear from both sides. Scott Daly, who is founder and managing director at Woodford Gray Group, and 20 years in technology recruiting, and has clients looking to hire permanent or contract talent. And Scott works closely with the decision makers to ensure he is identifying the right talent that can help grow and scale their business. Scott is also an expert at helping businesses grow through hypergrowth, secure talent that wouldn't usually have access to. So welcome, Cici, and welcome, Scott. Thank you very much for joining us today.
No problem.
And Cici, we have you on, hang on, unmute. I'll just unmute you there. Can we unmute her, please? Oh, there we go. Unmute. See, Coco. Cici, you with us?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
I'm trying to get my camera to work as well, but voice is step one.
Perfect. Well, I'm very glad that you're here, and looking forward to hearing from you. And today, Sebastian will be moderating the discussion, who is head of manufacturing at EMEA at ServiceNow. Sebastian has become synonymous with leading digital and fast-paced product development, and his conviction on the importance of transparent and open communication and fact-based decision-making and execution at speed has given him a proven track record accelerating global high-tech companies. So, Sebastian, thank you for moderating today's discussion, and I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thanks, Katrina, and welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Great to see everyone online again, and I'm really privileged to facilitate discussion. Unfortunately, we had some technicalities, therefore Cici will not be able to open up their webcam. So you need to do it with the pretty faces of Scott and myself, and unfortunately we are missing Cici. Shishi and Scott, thank you for joining and making yourself available at, let's call it, the EMEA dinner hour. In opposite of what being agreed, feel free during discussions to open up your mic, ask questions, type in things in the chat. It would be really helpful to make this as interactive as possible. Both of the speakers invited me to make sure that the participants will be able to ask questions. So what I would like to do is make sure that we understand what is a digital talent ecosystem. I would like to invite Scott and Shishi to start with that. So maybe I want to start with Shishi. So when we discussed about preparing this webinar, I think you were very passionate about developing talent into organizations, and your experience within Siemens, but also New Relics. You had quite some experience about the digital talent ecosystems and the importance of that into organizations. So maybe Shishi, you can take the time to introduce yourself and present your view on this ecosystem.
Thank you very much. Yeah, well, I think, you know, everybody I'm talking to, whether it's in the HR world or business world, have, you know, the word digital in their heads and in their mouths, right? And when people say digital, I think they mean very different things, and that's something that I have observed and realized and been struggling with, both when I was at Relics and Chief Learning Officer, but also now just recently joining Siemens. And just a bit about my background, I'm a biochemist by training, and I've worked a long time in the pharmaceutical industry, which is kind of a natural transition in corporate strategy, in fact, and just, you know, about 6 years ago or so, moved into human resources, starting with strategic side of the house, portfolio management, a lot to do with analytics as well, building up the infrastructure to capture as much data as we can and analyze that in the early days of HR analytics. And then also had experiences in operations, and recently at Relics, as I mentioned, I built the learning and development, both from the infrastructure perspective, but also programmatic for leadership development programs, but also technical skills development programs. And now, just a couple months ago, I joined Siemens AG in Munich, in fact, overseeing talent management, both from a strategic, but also trying to operationalize certain projects that are a very high priority for us. When we talk about digital talent and ecosystem, I think it's very important to look at it from the business side, right, and not just try to look at it from the human resources side. So just a couple things on the Siemens business. I'm sure that a couple of you at least are familiar with maybe some of the transitions that Siemens have gone through, now really trying to establish itself as a focused technology company. But what does that mean, right? And Siemens has been very much known previously, maybe still is known for its engineering. It's an engineering company, trains and so on and so forth, but maybe not so many people know that it has invested a lot recently and increasingly into software, right? Software as a business, a big side of that house, and whether it's in the trains business, mobility, smart infrastructure, or digital industries, the software business plays a larger part of the strategy. So for that, we need a very different kind of mindset, and we always talk about clock speed, and obviously digital talent that's not the traditional engineering. And we can't do that alone. We have done a lot of acquisitions over the years, more and more, as I said, on the software side. So that's where we acquire a lot of our talent. We try to keep them at arm's length, try not to integrate them fully. That would really defeat the purpose, not allowing them to run at an accelerated speed in hyper growth markets. But also there are certain partnerships that we have with governments, with other service providers. We're trying to have more creative partnerships when it comes to talent. So just a bit of a segue and a bit of an introduction to the business side of things. And when I speak of digital talent, as I said, that transition of the business model is quite important to understand.
Thanks, really appreciate for sharing that perspective. And indeed, so attracting talent from any source, to have the right sourcing strategy in place to define and find the right talent for your organizations with help of the ecosystem partners is crucial for successful execution of your strategy. Moving into Scott. Scott, you are really playing a pivotal role in that called this talent squeeze to build that ecosystem. And during our preparations, you shared your perception, your view on how to work with talent, how to work with the business to understand the need of talent, and how do you qualify the talent available, if there's any talent available, of course, in the market to make it work and fit into the right positions of a specific industry. So up to you, Scott, to just introduce yourself and share your view on and your role of managing talent in the ecosystem.
Well, thank you, Sebastian, for introducing me there. Firstly, obviously, my name's Scott Daly. I've got 20 years in technology recruitment, and I've seen it evolve over the 20 years. You know, certainly, you know, the digital tools side of things is where I believe everything's going these days. So from my position, myself personally, as a business owner and a recruiter and a headhunter, I'm sitting down with a number of clients and trying to understand what projects they've got coming up. And what I tend to hear is we want to invest in digital tools and grow our business through digitalization, transformation. And my part of that business also is to actually invest in my business and bring digital tools so that I can enhance my performance when I'm capturing these requirements from customers. And one example of that is we've just started to do our temps now on DocuSign, so contracts now, rather than the old way of going, you know, sending out a contract on email and saying, can you sign this, and wet signature and that kind of stuff, it's all DocuSign. And so we're evolving as a recruitment business ourselves. So you know, that's something we're investing in, interestingly, and getting new software to actually be able to provide the service and actually find and identify candidates that are going to be available on the market or helping these customers grow. But yeah, from a digital perspective, for me, that's evolving. So it's such an incredible rate, and there's pressure on, obviously, a number of vice presidents I sit down with of talent, where, you know, they say the buck stops with me. You know, we have pressure in these areas. We can talk about DevOps, we can talk about software engineering pressures, and how we're going to support them. So what I tend to do is sit down and put a plan in place and a roadmap to how we're going to help them secure the talent using our systems and solutions, and making sure those systems and solutions do execute on that plan and therefore bring the right talent to the table for the customer. But I think it's equally as important for the customer to give as much information about what they're doing in their business. And fundamentally, the customers that are winning, in my eyes, are the ones that are really sharing information and going the extra mile and providing documentation around strategy, tools, what they're looking to use over the next 12 to 18 months, the problems, the challenges. Those are the customers that are being really open and honest and transparent with it, with obviously, as they can be. Those are the ones who are successfully securing talent, because actually those candidates can see a challenge and opportunity for them to join a business. And therefore, all, as you know, these guys who are in tech, they want to solve problems, they want to bring their ideas to the table. So in answer to your question, I think you know, for me, it's important that clients really invest their time in the challenges they've got and they're facing around talent, and then utilize that challenge and get that out into the market. And obviously, from my perspective, then it's about supporting them with those challenges.
Thanks, Scott. And both of your stories triggers a point that you say understand the business, and I think Shishi pivot into HR. Let's classically organize and facilitate the HR processes, joiners, movers, leavers. You are clearing about talent acquisition. So Shishi, what I want to ask you is, how do you work with the business? How do you, in one of our leadership trainings that we have been decided, we see that strategic workforce planning is one of the elements that is missing. Scott is referring into clear objectives and key results that depicts the business strategy. But how do you work with the businesses to support the development and build the talent pipeline to make sure that you're able to successfully execute that specific business objectives?
Yeah, that's a very good and very big question, right? maybe I'll just comment on portions of it. So Siemens, as I mentioned before, has a reputation as an engineering company still today. And that is a bit of a problem for us if we are really trying to move into the software or as a digital, and technology company. And so we have just recently started a project around employer branding. Not surprising, right? We really need to dig deeper into what it means to be joining a Siemens company. There are multiple companies within Siemens, and what's attractive. And just from initial survey that we did in our key markets, we find that the talent that tend to join us are coming from other engineering companies, and we tend to lose our best talent to startups and software companies. So so employer branding projects very timely. As I said, testing those assumptions in key markets. But really, we're walking a multi-pronged approach with talent acquisition strategy, but also from a learning side and a value-based pipelining. So maybe I just comment a couple of those. From a talent acquisition strategy perspective, we're really still in the early stages, trying to do a landscape analysis. So we're not there yet to say, okay, we have identified exactly the types of talent and where they sit and our approach to get them on board and keep them with us. So we're not there yet. We're at the very beginning trying to define who are these people, because everybody talks about digital talent, talks about software folks, right? People from startups, cool folks. But who are these people really? So we're doing a very deep segmentation analysis of quote unquote digital talent. We're also going into the extension of our learning ecosystem to extend that to partners, third-party suppliers. We're just working out the governance of that. It's getting a little bit into that, the Spotify discussion of platform versus content governance debate, but we think it's a worthwhile thing to tackle because we think it will benefit both ways, right? Us really trying to educate our partners and people we work with quite closely on what we're about and trying to get them into our ecosystem, but it works the other way as well. So we're just starting that. We're also starting on a value-based pipelining that really just means we're trying to identify critical roles based on their value contribution, not merely hierarchy. That shouldn't be a new thing or a surprise. But we're trying to define the job to be done by these quote unquote digital talent in particular now, but also for the future. So through that exercise, I would say, we're really also forcing the business to think through what their future strategy is.
Yeah. So during the DASA DevOps leadership trainings and also the assessments that we have done at those companies, we do see the strategic workforce planning. So you talk about really building an ecosystem, doing the segment analysis, becoming almost like a really data-driven on your talent. You talk about a different operating model, Spotify, different business models, learning ecosystem and governance. Analysis of jobs to be done. We do see more in design thinking sessions that jobs to be done is being used to identify the work that needs to be executed by specific individuals and the knowledge required. So Scott, when you're engaging with your, let's call it your customer base, and you're defining, let's call it with the business, the talent needs. So can you explain me a little bit your method? Of course, I understand you're not revealing the whole secret sauce of doing the analysis and bringing all the talent acquisition, but could you maybe give me a little more insight on how you engage with your customers and how do you guide them throughout defining the real need of talent? And I mean, roles, scope, complexity, skills required. Can you help us a little bit to elaborate your process?
This is the area I absolutely love. First off, Shishi, you've got a huge job there because there's so many things to talk about. You've got your current workforce planning. What do you need? What's the business? What's the critical need? Then you've got your existing guys in the business. You're acquiring new talent that may be from a smaller organization and a startup kind of mentality. Then to bring them to the bigger mothership. I take my hat off to you for all the things you're going to be doing. I'm sure you're days full of enjoyment and stuff with loads of different moving parts, but so credit to that. But from my perspective, what I love to do is sit down with an organization, really truly understand the purpose, what they're trying to achieve, what's their business objectives over the next 12 to 18 months. Try and understand their culture, try and understand what is critical and not so critical, really advise them and guide them on what's possible in the marketplace and what isn't possible. Give them the true facts of are those the candidates that you're thinking about today, are they truly there, and what do we actually need to do if they're not, and how can we bring talent through the pipeline that potentially in 12 months time can be using those skill sets. So there's a lot to do there. From my perspective, each candidate I speak to, they need a purpose. They need something to really challenge them. So when you talk about bringing someone into the business, they want to be mobilized quite quickly and adding value. So there's all these things you sit down with the customer and say, how do we attract the talent? Are we after people that are from a nimble startup kind of organization, or would you prefer someone that's maybe got 10-15 years experience doing these various things and running these certain projects, and that Prince 2 way, or are you still agile? So there's lots to talk about, and what we do is we're able to define what person would fit in culturally, what are the skills demand, what sort of background and experience are we looking for, and we be able to package that up to the point where we know exactly what this customer really needs from us. And therefore, when we're going out to the marketplace, we're cutting down wastage of candidate CVs going over to the customer that aren't really going to fit in. Because we've spent so much time evaluating the customer, we know the type of candidates that actually can add value and the ones they really want. So it's all about relationships, it's all about communication, and actually, working together so that we can bring the right talent together. Hopefully that's kind of give you a bit of insight as to kind of what we do. But then from a systems perspective, obviously it's around about, once we've mobilized ourselves into the search for the talent, we've then got all the systems behind the scenes that sets up pipelining. We can skill and assess and, tech test and all the things that, we do behind the scenes to therefore give the clients really a great ratio. So if we were to send 3 or 4 CVs, we're in a position where we believe 1 or 2 will get hired for sure, because we've done those assessments and we feel that we've got the right the right engagement with the client.
Let me dive into something that triggers my thought. Like, so, okay, you're doing technical assessments, maybe capture the flag, identify the right skills and competences, but your story started with culture fit.
Yeah.
And then it becomes more like an area of defining the culture. So how do you help organizations to work on understanding the cultural fit of a specific service provider or a specific group of talent that's entering the company?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and it's quite a broad situation in so many respects, because each customer does want to narrow their culture as in their portfolio of potential candidates. So they sometimes will look at that particular team and give me more insight into a particular team and how that's been run and how that's set up. Are they all remote, and therefore the culture is slightly different to, say, a business that have got these guys in an office, or the team that actually needs to come in the office. Very similar situation at the moment with a client. All the software engineers are remote, but the infrastructure engineers are on site because they're still a bit on-prem. So the cultural brief is different. How do you really do that is sit down, and we have, I can't give too much secret sauce away, but we have several questions that we've built using another third party actually, and those 7 questions are really intelligent questions around how to define your culture. So by answering those questions, we kind of come out with an outcome of, this is the sort of person we should be really looking to identify. We don't discriminate against age or anything like that. It's more around the type of person that really will be happy there within that organization and actually add the value that the customer needs. So yeah, we've got around 7 questions that we asked quite straightforward to the HR director and a number of senior hiring managers to really answer those, to define that culture.
Thanks, Scott. And I want to continue and then move also to Shishi. What we do see, what we have defined, that DevOps is not only a set of practices of agile or testing, test automation, it's also a culture shift where we have identified new behaviors around courageous conversations, where we have about, for example, local decentralized decision making, empowering your individuals. You are describing a big shift in Siemens, right? An engineering company, I think from legacy also very, let's call Germany focused. Can you help us understand, if you're looking into talent, but also looking into that cultural shift where you would like to improve your new product introduction, your time to market, how do you facilitate that shift in hiring or developing existing talent in your organization, but also making sure that you are enabling that culture shift? And what I want to zoom in initially is what is being done in Siemens to define that new culture and what you understand about culture.
Yeah. Again, you're asking all the right questions, and it unfortunately can't be answered, in just a sentence. And honestly, we're still struggling with that ourselves, because culture is such an important topic, but it's a big one, right? So we're trying to break it down. So at Siemens, you might know that we recently acquired a company called Mendix, based out of Rotterdam. It's a low-code platform to build and improve mobile and web application at scale. It's used a lot in industrial, in the smart industries of today, smart factories, to make data accessible and actionable. So that's one example of an acquisition where we really didn't try at all to integrate them, because we're very, very fond of the culture elements of what they bring to the table. We're actually trying to bring some of those elements into pockets of the Siemens mothership and trying to see whether we can transform those pockets into what we call speedboats, right? So they're still part of the mothership, but they're in their culture and their thinking mindset, actions so different that they're able to almost act as an internal startup. And that we're still in the very early stages. So businesses such as e-mobility, not surprising, right? In the autonomous vehicle industry, where the German automotive industry has really missed a beat. Or in smart grid, in our smart infrastructure business. And we have just started, again, an analysis, try to break down what are the elements that make up that very startup-y culture, right? That culture that allows them to move so fast. And from just the human resources perspective, we have started to analyze, all aspects from the comp and ben, from the legal requirements, or rather what barriers we can remove, right, in order for people to do their hiring, in order to do their promotions, or whatnot they need to really being able to attract the right kind of talent, but also keep them there, right? It's no point attracting them and then not being able to keep them there. But another aspect, another challenge of culture is, if you have the same people in the so-called startup pockets that you want to cultivate within Siemens, that come from an engineering background, that have been at the company for decades, and you're trying to really shift their mindsets by introducing them to the Mendix folks, so by trying to remove some of the barriers, that alone isn't really isn't going to cut it, right? And that's another problem that we have still a critical mass of people who come in with that mindset. And it will take time to shift. It will take time to intermix them with new folks who have a different mindset. And I know that everybody talks about psychological safety, or what can leaders do to model that kind of behavioral. And we're doing all of that too, right? We're doing the education at the leadership level. At Relics, for example, which as a business has transformed itself from a publishing business to a technology platform business within just a couple of years. Just 2 years ago, we've done a digital leadership executive program in partnership with Harvard Business School. Yeah. Because the leaders need to understand what it means to be a digital leader, right? Because it's so nebulous. But also the alignment is important. So both at Relics and at Siemens, we call it the 22K project. So all the 22 leaders and managers of the organization need to understand what that mindset shift is about, what the agility is about, right? What competing in hypergrowth markets is about. It's not just buzzwords, but being more concrete about it. And then in both organizations, how do we put it into action? For example, at Relics, we had our very senior leaders go through that program that I mentioned about digital leadership, and then really think through what are the challenges that we're tackling in the business and posing that challenge to their teams and extended an organization. So it's a side-by-side learning and teach back that really then tries to get the organization on board a bit more in that mindset shift and in that creation of a safe space to experiment and to voice their ideas and opinions. And the last comment, maybe also measuring is quite important, measuring progress. Right? We're talking about, okay, how do you observe those behavioral shifts? Exactly. Well, really trying to, at Relics, for example, we've introduced something called, it's maybe a misleading word, but management effectiveness index. But in fact, it's just, 10, 15 question survey that we dish out, to people who like to participate on a monthly or sometimes bi-monthly basis, but they really ask questions about psychological safety, about how comfortable are you sharing sometimes controversial ideas with your immediate team and boss, about learning application, behavioral changes that can be observed. So finding a way to really measure those, even if it's small steps, right, of behavioral changes, I think it's worthwhile thinking through.
I just need to say hats off, Shishi. You touch upon every topic that we have been discussed.
Well done. Yeah, it's great.
Maybe I should stop asking questions that are so broad. But first of all, I would like to invite, because I think as well Scott and Shishi have provided a lot of insight about how they run programs in Siemens or in Relics, and how they have been able to shift the desired behavior. Because what we in DASA DevOps Leader focus on culture is what are the observable behaviors of an organization, what do we see as diminishers or accelerations, where you also have the opportunity to dive into and discuss about what is the real desired behavior, because we believe that performance is results and behavior together. If there are any questions, and I see a few known people, feel free to raise your hand, ask some questions. And then we will be able to answer. I see that Amr Abdullah, you have raised some questions. So feel free to open up your mic and raise the question towards, let's go, Scott and or Shishi.
Amma, you need to click on your microphone to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. I don't know where are you. The question here, actually, we know that we are in digital era, in digital transformation, if you like, and the challenge here is not only to find the right talent, because the technology is keep changing and changing fast, and what we consider the technology is the one that we need to find the right talent to work in could change tomorrow. The question is, we need to find the right talent who is adaptable, flexible, with high learnability for the new technology that we don't know about it, maybe. How we can find that talent who has that flexibility, that adaptability. We can find a talent who is, let's say, technically suit the existing innovative technology now, and we can, let's say, he has the right mindset. But how we can know that this talent has the ability or can be adaptable for next new innovative technology that we don't know about yet, because we don't want to end up having a talent today, invest on him, and then later on he is not adaptable for any new technology, which is, if you like, reskilling or upskilling. How to find the right talent who is accepting to be in this part, reskilling and upskilling. This is my question.
Thanks. Who would like to take the question? Scott, maybe Shishi?
Yeah, great question. I'll jump in on that one. I think that what it really comes down to is having that visible leader, that person that is looking at the technology roadmap. And if you're a smaller organization, evaluating technologies as they come along and allowing the team to think about those technologies in their private time, to think about if there's a certain technology that they know is coming along in 12 months' time that they may need to use commercially, is giving them the opportunity to learn and develop those skills, either in core hours or even outside of work, but giving that visibility of what's potentially coming through. So the leader needs to be really visible, and that leader needs to obviously ensure that the attitude of the candidates he's got or the team he's got have that ability to adapt and overcome, potentially these new technologies that come along. The larger companies, I'm seeing more and more of innovation departments. So there are select 4 or 5 individuals that are assessing technologies at beta stage to see whether those technologies will fit in to the commerciality of their business. So before they even go live to the engineers, for example, the innovation team are assessing, evaluating technologies that we don't even know about yet, and really understanding whether that's going to fit within their technology stack and actually benefit the business commercially. And I'm seeing more and more of this in large financial organizations, these little pockets of innovation tech guys, sort of architecture level, if you like, and they're feeding this information back to the top of the board, but also to the CTO and CIO, and then invariably they're feeding that down to the engineers, and also looking out to the wider market who aren't even in the business yet. So they're really the guys that are winning because they're already advancing in their what they're looking for moving forward. So I think that it's around visibility more than anything.
Thanks, Scott. I would like to add an angle to it myself. So when we are assessing companies as the DASA community itself, so we look into different angles of a company. We often see that product teams are organizing quite well, they're adopting new technology, they're using it. Where do we see often dysfunctions of organization is that they don't have being modeled their next business change. We believe in the statement called Jack Welch, is where change outside of a company exceeds the capability of change inside a company, the company will be going out of business a moment in time. However, translating that change that is needed to survive, to address total addressable market, new market shares, is also looking into your portfolio. What do we do today? What do we need to do tomorrow? And how do you communicate that by doing portfolio management or doing that, and you communicate what is needed? I still remember that we have thought leaders in the industry saying, those companies who are not working on AI today will be too late, right? There was a real statement going out and everyone said AI. If you now look at the amount of investment that is being made into data science, into organizations, adopting data, artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning neural networks to work and optimize manufacturing like Siemens is doing, or optimize, for example, decision-making and some other areas of healthcare, we do see that data and artificial intelligence is disrupting the business. But being a leader at a company, being the CTO or technology leader, communicating the change and empowering the people, doing strategic workforce planning, where you focus on talent acquisition, talent development, internal mobility, and leverage the capability of HR to make sure that your company is fit for the future is critical. I can tell you out of own experience, being engaging with a lot of companies, especially in the field of manufacturing, is not done a lot on those levels of organizations. What are the potential indicators and lagging or leading indicators where we get feedback of those individuals in a company that the contractors or the temp employees are doing all the fun stuff? Because what happens, companies start projects, and then suddenly we need talent to execute, and then they go out into the field, and where it's able, they will get contractors, agencies, subcontractors, other companies getting in to work on that new stuff. However, if you really have a good strategy on developing your new business, developing capabilities from cradle to grave, you are able to work and develop your talent and use and leverage the business knowledge into your organization to develop the talent. So we have leading and lagging indicators that can help us how organizations are performing across the whole stack, from vision, strategy, vision, mission, back into execution and product teams itself. And that we have a lot of visibility. The DASA DevOps leadership training is really articulating the need of that clarity on goal cascading, vision, portfolio management to make sure you are fit for the future versus when, oh, we have a problem, let's bring in new talent from an external agency. And then when the external agency leaves, there's no single capability in the organization left to continue that journey.
Yeah. Absolutely spot on. Yep. Perfect.
I maybe just have one comment because we're just trying things out at Siemens. It sounds like the question is around how do we find that unicorn person, right? And sometimes it's not really that the person isn't capable or able to learn quickly, but they're just in the wrong role at the wrong time. And because jobs and roles shift so quickly, especially nowadays and going to the future, right? Sometimes people stay in their roles for 3 months and then they're already wanting to move on or their skills are outdated. So, but how do we keep pace at finding or matching them to the right types of jobs to be done? And at Siemens, we're just starting to partner with a company called Eightfold. That might be ringing a bell to some of you, but it's really, they call themselves an AI company like most companies nowadays do. What they're really trying to do is using smart algorithms to try to match the jobs to be done at a company once that's defined very clearly to the people, both external talent and internal talent. So we're just starting to see what their capabilities are. It might be still a bit early, but if that works, we think that it can have a lot of benefits in terms of moving people around quickly, so that really add value using their skill sets at that time when it's needed. And the other comment I have is how do you find talent that's always striving to learn, that's agile, that's open to feedback and coaching, and has that desire to move forward. I mean, that's the kind of colleagues that we all want to work with, right? So we are really trying to tap into our alumni network, or we have a graduate program. Say, okay, people who come out of that graduate program at Siemens, how do we try to retain them? Because we have seen how they work. We've seen their learning agility or not, right? And then we pick the people that we want to retain and try to keep them as long as possible in the company. So if you have those programs, we can observe, we can almost test things out with the certain folks, and then pick the ones that are a right fit for the organization.
Thanks. And just to validate the answer, so Amir, any further questions, things you would like to elaborate on, sharing your perspective on the answers being provided by Shishi and Scott?
First of all, thank you for your feedback and for the answers. I think this is, or this will become the challenge, because as all of us know that in digital era, talent is, or let's say the people in general, is the most challenging part. It's not about the technology. It is not about because if we don't find the right skills and talent to use that technology in the right way, then there is no use of that technology. I think this will become and always will become. What I like the answer that I heard it. I forget the name. I'm sorry for that. That the organization should have a program of, let's say, reskilling, upskilling for those talents whom can, let's say, be adapting, can be able to be adaptable, flexible, have this capability of learning new technology, leading, because otherwise we will keep losing those talents. We can hire them today and they will leave tomorrow because there is a new technology and they are not able to adapt or learn this new technology. In all cases, all your feedback is valid, and thank you very much for that. But I think this will become always a challenge for the organizations, especially in this era. Thank you.
Thanks, Ahmed. And I really would like to jump in. So why we are organizing this kind of webinars is exactly related to this topic. And the adoption curve of technology, where we in the past had maybe 10 years, 15 years to adopt technology, it needs to be shortened into just months to be effective. Upskilling and reskilling are ready, and I would like to even stretch further. We need to do a learning culture. But in the last webinar, where we're discussing about addressing the talent squeeze, we talk about the need upskilling and reskilling programs. But we also identified that we have, like, you need to do the walk, you need to demonstrate leadership that's continuously developing. We discussed around budget. We discussed about learning infrastructure. So do you have a platform that allows you to seamlessly learn, let's call it the trainings you need at the job, right? So you don't need to go to a classroom, but if you have challenges, you are able to eat and bite-sized trainings to do and improve your work bit over bit. And then we spoke about, as a third element in it, the social construct. Is it being rewarded? Is it being recognized in every opportunity that we are developing and growing and adopting new learnings and new insights? What I would like to conclude on, it's not an easy puzzle. It's platform, it's process, and it's the majority of the equation that I agree with you. It's people. But people live in a culture. A culture eats strategy for breakfast, and structure eats culture for lunch. And it remains a picture. So leadership and behaviors that are being constructed needs to accelerate the learning behavior of the individuals. And that's critical for your success of your organizations. Now, focusing on slowly but steadily moving into the closing, is that Scott brought in huge insights on how to build a rapport with your stakeholders, to get structural insights on what is needed, the culture of an organization, the talent needs, looking into the market, where to source and find individuals. Shishi really exposed that they are in Siemens and in Relics built a whole, let's call it, I would say, an ecosystem on itself, where they work with partners, sourcing strategies with individuals, create and accelerate the right behaviors of enabling the leaders to understand how they are supporting or diminishing the potential need of learning is critical. With that, I would like to hand over to Scott to add his final 2 cents on the table related to a proper talent ecosystem.
Yeah, Sebastian, thank you very much for having me on the show. For me, obviously from my perspective as a recruiter, I think it's all about partnerships and really working with each customer to understand what their next 12, 18 months looks like, so we can really bed in and help them long term with securing the future talent for their business as they grow and scale their business. So yeah, there you go.
Thanks, Scott. And if I'm just connecting it back to our DevOps principles, customer focused, customer centricity is critical in your approach.
Absolutely.
Shishi, your final 2 cents on the table.
Thank you. Well, I just think there's so much to explore, right? The world is moving faster and faster. We just need to really clarify what we're talking about most of the time. I think what really is confusing to me when I have conversations is everybody's talking about whether it's digital talent or we need to accelerate, we need to have 2 clock speeds, we need to be agile, we need to do this and that. But really making sure that we're all aligned on what we're talking about, and really defining things very clearly, right? And measuring whether we're really achieving what we're set out to do. I know that's very broad and maybe not entirely on point, but I just find it's quite important, especially in this day and age.
Yeah. So just to conclude, and I think you're spot on. In the first session this week we had with the DASA DevOps leadership training, we talk about a lot of elements and people said you need to have the right mindset. My first question is, could you please define mindset? Yeah. A lot of things are just being very unclear what is being needed, and that level of clarity, what is being needed, where a company needs to go, what the right behavioral aspects are that you can define easy and simple is critical for your own success. And I always use one indicator. If you cannot explain it in 2 sentences, you don't understand it at the right proper level. And thanks, Shishi, for your contribution. Thanks, Scott. Really appreciate it. I think your feedback is really spot on all the things we are doing in DASA DevOps, building that, let's call it, ecosystem that's relevant for members to adopt them and help them across the journey of their digital transformation, where talent is indeed the most significant, difficult topic to work upon. Thank you very much. And with that, I want to give it back to Katrina.
Thank you very much, everybody. That was a great conversation on a much needed topic and a much relevant topic and a critical topic that everybody's talking about right now. So, we obviously had a webinar yesterday and we're talking about, employer branding and culture, which you raised many of these topics today. So, it's good to carry on this discussion and, hopefully we can solve, problems or where they're much needed related to talent. So thank you, Sebastian, for hosting today, for moderating today's discussion, and who's very much, part of the DASA community, and Scott also from a service provider perspective, and Shishi from an enterprise and Siemens, and with your valuable input too. So thank you, all of you. And just to mention about future topics for the Enterprise Leadership Forum, please feel free to join. We have one coming up in March, which is maximizing the return on your cloud investments, which will be hosted on Thursday, the 31st of March at 5 p.m. Central European Time. And then not forgetting, just to add in, we have the DASA Awards coming up in April, basically with the idea to encourage future generations of DevOps professionals by highlighting and celebrating DevOps successes. So we would love to see you there, but also if you have any nominations, please feel free to put those forward, and you can find more information on our website, which is DevOpsAgileSkills.org, and that's hosted on Wednesday the 20th of April from 4 o'clock. And then we will be looking to host our May event on improving the time to market of digital products and services on Thursday the 26th of May at 4 o'clock. So Central European Time. So thank you everybody for joining us today, and thank you for your questions. And we look forward to seeing you again in this forum. And the idea is to build it and grow it and discuss topics amongst leaders where they can share and talk about their challenges and their successes and give each other advice. So just more information on DASA, if you would like to learn about how we can help you in terms of guidance on your digital transformation, you can get in touch with Helen Parker, who is our membership director, helen.parker@devopsagileskills.org. So thank you everybody, and look forward to seeing you in the future in this forum, and as we hope to grow it. Many thanks.